y'all. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Carrie. This is where I talk about knitting and crafts and my passions and things that I love. And today I want to combine two of my biggest passions, which is fiber and represented by popcorn, film. Yes, I am an absolute film buff. I love movies. I always have. I went to school to study media communications so I could work in the entertainment industry. I moved to Los Angeles to work in the entertainment industry. Living the dream. I really just felt like sitting down, knitting, and watching a movie. And the movie I'm going to watch today is Misery. And the reason I want to watch Misery on my crafting channel, where I mostly talk about knitting, but other things too, is because the knitwear in this movie is amazeballs. Like, it's so good. It's so good. And so today I'm going to share with you my love of this movie, Misery, and the knitwear and knitting and crochet. There is some crochet in it as well. Hit subscribe, hit the notification bell, give this video a thumbs up, and let's knit, let's craft, and watch a movie. I got my wine, I got my popcorn, I got my yarn. I'm going to knit a very simple, my classic, you know the one I'm about to say. If you've been watching my channel, you know the one I'm about to say. I'm going to knit my dishcloth pattern that was like the pattern I watched my grandmother knit. It's the only thing I ever saw her knit was this dishcloth pattern. But it's like the perfect, for me, the perfect movie watching pattern because I don't need to really pay that close of attention to what I'm doing while I'm working it. So I'm going to work that pattern. I'm going to watch the movie. I'm going to drink some wine. I'm going to eat some popcorn. And I'm going to break down for you the critical knitwear moments of the movie Misery. Okay? So that's the plan. That is the plan. The movie Misery was directed by Rob Reiner, and it stars Kathy Bates and James Caan, and Kathy Bates won an Academy Award for Best Actress for her, like, iconic performance of Annie Wilkes, one of the all-time great female psychopaths in film and literature. And the costume designer for Misery was Gloria Gresham, who had a long career in Hollywood and also did the design for When Harry Met Sally. The movie Misery is based upon the Stephen King novel of the same name. I actually had read the Stephen King novel years before the movie came out. In fact, my mom introduced me to Stephen King, I think around the age 12, which I think that might have been a questionable parenting decision on my mom's part. Maybe. James Caan plays a novelist who feels trapped by the character of Misery Chastain, whom he had created. He's a romance novelist, but he wants to be taken seriously as a writer, and so he has killed off the character of Misery Chastain. Wait. Is that Stephen King on the... I think that's Stephen King. I think that's Stephen King on the mock-up of a Misery Chastain novel cover. Well played. Well played. He's gone to Colorado to write a serious novel. And he finishes the novel, decides to hop in his car and drive home, and gets stuck in a blizzard. His car goes off the road. He nearly dies, but he is rescued by a nurse named Annie Wilkes, who turns out to be his #1 fan. And mayhem ensues. So this movie takes place in Colorado in the dead of winter, and it is like a knitwear extravaganza. I mean, like, if the internet was then when the movie came out as it is now, knitters would have been dying over the knitwear they saw in this movie. And so a couple of crochet pieces too. I'm going to watch the movie and I will pause the movie at critical knitwear moments, okay? And I will put up on the screen, I will have a timer, a clock going. So if you want to bring the movie up for yourself and see what I'm talking about, you can do that. And I will do my best to describe what I am seeing. If I can find some other visual representation of the knitwear that I'm looking at, I will absolutely try to bring that up on screen. And we're gonna see how this works, because this is a big old experiment that I'm doing.
And now, on with the show.
We see a shot of a Lucky Strike cigarette, a very, hotel room champagne flute, a bottle of Dom Perignon, and typing, and an old typewriter. Mechanical typewriter, that, not even electric. And here's Paul Sheldon. Now, it's interesting of Paul Sheldon, by the way, I'll just say right now, throughout the movie, Paul Sheldon never actually wears knitwear. Maybe the shirt in this first scene, as he's writing the end, he's wearing a red button-down shirt, and then he has a black kind of turtleneck long sleeve shirt underneath it. So he's wearing layers because it's Colorado and it's cold, so you're gonna wear layers. It's interesting, he is not wearing like a big hefty sweater. So this immediately kind of sets him apart from the other characters that we will meet who are from the area. Clearly he's an outsider because he's not wearing any knitwear. He's wearing what he might wear, on a fall day in New England. He's got his black Mustang, he's clearing the snow off. He's wearing a suede jacket, completely inappropriate. Again, showing that he's an outsider. And then this first song starts. A little groovy. I'm knitting my first 15 stitches across to get started on my knit. Now the snow is starting to fall more on his windshield. He turns on the wipers. What he doesn't know is he's driving into a blizzard. And nothing happens. Nothing good happens in a movie when you drive into a blizzard. Like, nothing. I am so freaking hot right now. Oh my God, under these lights. But I thought I'm going to have to drink more wine to try and cool off. So I'm going to knit 3, and I'm going to do yarn. Oh, here it comes. Here's the accident. He drives over the side of the road, crashes into the snow. His car is flipping over. How could anyone possibly survive this? Like, no one could possibly survive, right? If he didn't survive, this would be a very short film. And there would not be all the glorious knitwear to come. Oops. Lost that. Pick that up. Okay, save that. I saved that like Annie Wilkes saves Paul Sheldon from the car. The difference is I'm not going to murder my project. All right, we're about to get our very first piece of important knitwear. The camera swings over and we see our first shot of Annie Wilkes from the point of view of Paul Sheldon. And she is wearing a white cabled cardigan. And it's quite a fantasy of cables on this cardigan. There's different ropes, there's horseshoe, but I'm really fascinated by what I see on the back shoulder of this cardigan, where it looks like it's more twisted German cable stitches, or maybe it's a traveling stitch pattern, but it also looks like it's on a background of reverse stockinette. The whole cardigan feels very like homemade, handmade, although I can't imagine Annie Wilkes knitting even late at night in a graveyard shift at the hospital. What I find so fascinating about this first outfit from Annie Wilkes and this first piece of like knitwear in the movie, it's actually kind of different than most of the wardrobe that Annie Wilkes is seen in throughout the movie. But I think that the reason that the costume designer chose that particular outfit is she is introducing Annie Wilkes. Annie Wilkes says, I'm a nurse. And there is something about her outfit and sort of the creams and the whites of it that sort of evokes the feeling of a nurse's uniform. So I think it was a very clever use of color and knitwear to evoke the feeling of Annie Wilkes's former profession without it being like a straight up nurse's, uniform. All right, so I'm using a picot edge for this dishcloth, and so what I'm going to do for that is I've just finished the first 3 yarn overs, so I'm going to bind off these 3 stitches and then continue on doing short rows. We're back in New York, by the way, with Lauren Bacall, queen of the silver screen, and we meet Buster for the first time. And he's wearing just a plaid flannel shirt and his sheepskin vest. No exciting knitwear here, but when his wife comes in, then we're gonna get some fun. Ooh, let's stop here. Let's stop here for a second. And we're about to get a good shot of Frances Sternhagen here in one of the best cardigans in the movie. She's wearing this brown white with a stripe of kind of a corally pink Fair Isle cardigan, and it has buttons, like these silver buttons down it. And this is what, again, this is one of those knitwear pieces in this movie where it's like, well, she may have bought it, but somebody definitely hand knit that cardigan. And I wouldn't be surprised if her character, even though in the movie you never see her knit, I wouldn't be surprised if her character was a knitter because of just the array of knitwear that she's constantly wearing. But this is just, I love this. I love this pattern, this Fair Isle pattern. So good. Is there anything creepier in a movie than a straight edge blade shaving a neck? You're always like, ooh, something bad could happen there. I feel like this is one of the subtle things that Rob Reiner, by the way, does. It just shows how vulnerable the character of Paul Sheldon is in this house with Annie, because he has to trust her with a straight edge razor at his neck. It's just one of those subtle things where it's like, well, if Annie Wilkes is trusting, this is all fine. But if she's crazy, well, this is scary. And he doesn't really know yet how crazy she is. Thank God, Kathy Bates' performance in this movie is so amazing. She just plays like someone who just seems sweet, maybe socially awkward and isolated. Maybe just a little childlike. You don't necessarily know that she's full on psychopathic. But this is what his life is, having a straight edge razor at his neck every moment. Very strong metaphor. Well done, Rob Reiner. Well done. All right, now Buster is at the Silver Creek Lodge, and the caretaker there is wearing a nice cranberry knit cardigan, probably store-bought, but still feels very much in the vein of the rest of the community. Kind of an interesting, looks like it's a raglan. I love the bolo that he's wearing. One thing that's so interesting about this movie, now that I look about it in terms of the color palette, is how much the production design and the wardrobe department made everybody feel like they're really organic to their environment. The colors between the wardrobe and the production design very much reflect back upon each other. And I just noticed that the manager, Libby, at the Silver Creek Lodge is wearing the same cranberry red that we first see Paul Sheldon wearing when he's at the Silver Creek Lodge. I don't think that's a coincidence. It's really well done. Even Annie looks like, in her own sort of wool pinafore dress, she just was spun out of the same material as the environment that she's in. Whereas, and this is one of the things that's really interesting with Paul Sheldon, is even laying in this bed wearing his whites, he doesn't look like he is from the same place as everybody else. It's really very cleverly done. Okay. Oops. Oh my god, I'm having fun. Look, I don't know how this video is going to turn out for all y'all watching it, but I'm having a great time shooting this. Oh, she's about to criticize his work. The swearing, Paul. She doesn't like the swearing. There, I said it. Oh, it took so much energy out of her to say the swearing, Paul. Look, I'm going to tell you, it really shouldn't have been that hard. My parents tell me the swearing, Carrie, all the time. Well, not all the time, but when it happened, let's just say I've gotten that lecture. And now we get the first sign, the real sign that Annie Wilkes is kind of dangerous. Kathy Bates' performance, rightfully, gets all the talk. But James Caan is so good too, because there's so much in the movie where he has to show to the audience that he recognizes the cray-cray that is going on, but pretend to Annie Wilkes that it's all fine. We're getting another great piece of knitwear right now, but before I stop the film, I love this scene so much. I love this couple so much. Here's Buster's wife coming on to him. Virginia, when you're in this car, you're my deputy. I love their relationship, by the way. I just love the two of them. Like, they obviously love each other. They've been together for a long time. And again, it's just a credit to both the actors because they don't have a ton of scenes, but their scenes, every one of them is memorable. And the deputy wants to have sex. But the deputy, Virginia, always has the greatest some of the greatest knitwear. And she's wearing a fantastic coral pink hat. I want to pause for a second on this hat because right now is where you get a really good view of her hat. You know what? Now that I look at it more closely, I always thought it was cable, but I think, is it a cabled hat? You know what? I don't think that's a cable hat. I think it's a slip stitch pattern. There are no crosses going on. Wow. Sorry, I'm so excited now. I want to find out what that stitch pattern is because I always just assumed it was a cable knitted hat. I mean, my mind is blown right now because I always thought it was a cabled pattern, but it's not. And I mean, oh man, I want to stop. I can't, I don't have time, but I really, honestly, I want to stop right now and start going through my stitch dictionaries and figuring out what that stitch pattern is. This just occurred to me. The color of Frances Sternhagen's hat in this scene is the same color as the stripe of pink in the cardigan she had on in the previous scene. So what do I think? I think that the characters, we are meant to see that this character has knitted all of this stuff herself over the years because, like, come on, you're just... I'm going to go in the theory that Virginia is a knitter. And I love that. It makes me more sad for her about what's going to come later. I mean, she'll survive. Spoiler alert, Virginia survives. But the thing about horror films is it's such, like, horror writers are such bastards because they make you fall in love with a character. So you're going to really feel it when something bad happens to them. So, spoiler alert, enjoy Buster while you can. That's all I'm going to say. Oh, she's got the book, Misery's Child, where Paul Sheldon kills off her favorite character. And she's wearing a knitted hat as well, but it's just a plain black, 1x1 ribbing knitted hat, probably store-bought. I don't get the sense that Annie Wilkes is a knitter or a crocheter. She's wearing a green sweater, again with a textured stitch pattern. It looks like a rib-based pattern, maybe a broken rib pattern, or maybe it's a waffle stitch, or at least a play on a waffle stitch, but it's definitely a textured stitch pattern. But it's a dark green, very much in her color palette.
And basically for the rest of this scene, Paul Sheldon is all, the roads are open. Their phones are working. Can I get home? Can I get home? I really want to be at my daughter's birthday. It's today. And Annie Wilkes is just like so disappointed because all she wants to talk about is the book in her hands. Annie Wilkes's excitement is as broken as the rib pattern in her sweater.
Little does she know. Little does she know. Boy, our authors can break our hearts, can't they? Killing off our favorite characters. What would you do? What would you do if an author, a writer, killed off your favorite character and you had the opportunity to take care of them back to health? Would you make them bring your favorite character back? Oh, this is one of the funniest.
This is one of my favorite scenes in the movie. The door starts to creak open, and then Paul looks at the door. What is going to come through now? What is Annie Wilkes going to bring into his life now? And in runs Annie Wilkes' pig named Misery.
Again, I think that Rob Reiner did such a great job directing this movie in terms of a horror film, because before the pig comes in, the door opens and there's creepiness. The music is telegraphing something creepy might be coming. You can start feeling yourself going, ooh, is this going to be a bad moment? And then the pig runs through and it's a funny moment. And that's something that's a really good horror movie will do, is will start to rise your anticipation of something bad is about to happen and then undermine it. And the reason that's important in a horror film is because then your expectation, your ability to predict when the bad thing is about to come is undermined. And you have to start questioning yourself, is this when the bad thing is going to happen or not? Like a really good horror, a bad horror film, you'll know every single moment. Every single scary moment is going to be telegraphed to you and you will know all of them. A really good horror film is going to have you build up that anticipation and then undermine it at times so that you then feel like you can't really predict when the bad things are about to happen.
Okay, so we're getting into a part of the movie where actually a lot of great things happen. There's a lot of great scenes and a lot of important scenes, but not necessarily a lot of knitwear. So I think at this point, I'm going to leap ahead a bit.
Yum, yum. It's time for a tasty and refreshing snack. We promise to satisfy your hunger, your thirst, your sweet tooth. So visit our refreshment center now. Let's go!
So Annie Wilkes discovers that Misery Chastain is dead, and she's none too happy about it. Paul realizes that he's in a lot of trouble as she threatens his life, and then leaves him alone, saying, "If I'm dead, then you're dead," because nobody knows that he's alive. And we then come to what is one of the best pieces of knitwear in the entire movie.
We're back to Buster. Oh, is this it? This is it! The sweater where I said, I think I need to do a video on this. And this is Buster's sweater. And I am now thoroughly convinced that Virginia knitted this for him. In my headcanon, Virginia knitted him this cardigan. And it's a stranded colorwork piece.
However, what's interesting is the stranded colorwork motifs don't really look either from the Fair Isle tradition or from Scandinavian traditions, and I have to wonder if it's meant to evoke more Native American motifs that you would see. In fact, it kind of reminds me of some of the motifs that you see in Annie Wilkes' bathrobe, which appears later in the film, and both of those remind me of some of the Native American motifs that you actually see in the movie The Shining. And of course, The Shining is another Stephen King story that takes place in Colorado. But to get back to Buster's amazing sweater.
It's chunky. This is a chunky knitwear pattern. This totally looks handmade. It doesn't look like this was bought in a store. Certainly, this is not what you're going to find in the JCPenney catalog. Remember, this movie came out in the 1990s. We got catalogs sent to us in the mail, and we would order from those catalogs, okay? Okay, it was a thing. It was like, you know, pre-internet online shopping. But this is the sweater that made me stop and go, I think I need to do a video about this movie and the knitwear in it. But yeah, that is definitely, I mean, it could be worsted weighted yarn. It's probably worsted weight. And normally when you do stranded color work, you do it in DK weight. But it's definitely either a worsted or a bulky weight yarn she used for that. So again, Virginia in kind of the pink color. She's in a sweater, can't tell as many details about it. Man, good job on the costume department with that sweater on Buster.
It's intermission. Rise and stretch time. Time to refresh yourself and visit our snack bar. Got a yen for hot popcorn? Your favorite soft drinks are sparkling cold. The juicy Frank sizzling hot. There's delicious coffee, freshly brewed, and all kinds of ice cream and candy to tempt you. Showtime will be announced loud and clear to get you back to your car in time. So stretch your legs. Come to the snack bar now.
All right, I gotta bind off, and I'm going to work all of my wrap stitches now, my German double stitches.
And once again, we're getting into a section of the movie where actually a lot of really important things happen, but there's not a lot of great knitwear. Annie Wilkes does return to the farm, has to help Paul Sheldon get back into his bed because he tried to get out, but wasn't strong enough to get very far. Annie Wilkes makes Paul Sheldon burn the novel that he was writing at the beginning of the movie, but she sets up a writing room for him so that he can bring Misery Chastain back into her life.
Think of Annie Wilkes as your inspiration. Well, that's kind of terrifying, isn't it?
Paul manages to get her out of the house long enough for him to search the house on his own, find a phone, and realize that Annie Wilkes has no working phone in the house. But meanwhile, Buster and Virginia are trying to find him.
Oh, wait, we gotta pause. We gotta pause on another, like, Francis Sternhagen. Sorry, my brain paused with the movie. We have to pause on another Francis Sternhagen knitted cap.
At this point in the movie, the authorities have found Paul Sheldon's car and believe that he is dead, but Buster believes that he was in fact rescued and that he may still be alive. And of course, Buster's wife / deputy Virginia is right by his side wearing another fabulous knitted piece.
She is actually wearing a different color. She usually is seen wearing like pinks and browns, but here she has a blue knitted cap. And once again, I am convinced that her character is meant to be seen as knitting all of these. This is a textured stitch pattern. Definitely not cable of any sort. Staring at a blank piece of paper when you don't feel inspired because your psychopathic nurse is trying to force you to bring back her favorite character. That's a tough moment for a writer. That's a tough moment. What do you write in a moment like that? I think Paul Sheldon's answer is kind of perfect. But he's going to write something because that's his only way of living. He is Scheherazade. Can you imagine trying to placate your tormentor like this? Oh, I'm a woman. Of course I can. We have to pause here because Annie is wearing a slightly lighter color. Now, at the beginning of the movie, the first time we see her, she's wearing very much like almost white cardigan, very much in the nurse's vein. But here we are now, and she's reading the real start of Misery's return, and they lighten up her look a little bit. just a little bit. It's very much in the kind of the gray tone, but these are lighter colors, and she's back in a knitted cardigan. There's a little bit of cabling on the sleeve. It's really interesting though, because this looks like it's a drop shoulder sleeve on this cardigan. It is interesting that in this part of the movie, very often, they still keep her in the earthy tones, but they are lighter than the tones in like kind of the first part of the movie. Like she is lighting up as Misery Stain is being brought back to life. I love that Annie Wilkes' idea of filling a house with love, romance, is Liberace.
So once again, in the interest of time, I'm going to skip past some scenes that don't have a lot of knitwear. Namely, a really important scene where Paul Sheldon attempts to drug Annie Wilkes so he can escape the house, and of course the plan fails. So Paul now has no choice but to write the greatest work of his life in order to save his life.
Now Liberace is going to play, and Paul Sheldon is going to write. And Annie Wilkes is reading, and Buster is reading. And what's interesting about this is you see Buster reading, and he's now in a textured dark green sweater. And
when Annie Wilkes came back with Misery's child, she was also wearing a dark green textured sweater.
And maybe that's significant, maybe it's not. What I find so interesting about it is that there are certain, I feel like the color palette in this movie sort of connects characters in interesting ways, where it's like Buster is so obviously a good person who wants to do the right thing. Annie Wilkes, in her own twisted mind, and it is very twisted, but in her own twisted mind, she thinks she's a good person trying to do the right thing. But there's a refined quality to Buster's sweater that doesn't exist with Annie Wilkes's. And I think that speaks to the way in which Annie Wilkes is crazy, is twisted, is a psychopath, and Buster is a good person. But notice, again, we're heading into sort of the final stretch of the movie, and it is once again sort of marked by Annie Wilkes leaving the house with Paul having to fend for himself. Now, the first time Paul had to fend for himself, he couldn't even get out of the room. But now here he is, and he's giving a knife. Dropped a stitch, but it's okay. I'm going to fix it.
But at this point in the movie, Annie Wilkes has the blues. She realizes Paul will be finished soon, so she leaves the house with a gun, threatening suicide. So Paul takes this opportunity to once again leave his room, goes to the kitchen, and he grabs a knife. As he's going back to his own room, he finds Annie's memory book laying. And as he goes through, he discovers that Annie Wilkes has a history, and that history is actually being an angel of death in hospitals.
This, by the way, even though it's such a trope, when Paul Sheldon finds the memory lane photo book and you realize how sick and twisted Annie Wilkes is also the moment where you're like, damn, I don't care what you do. There is a part of you throughout the movie where you sit there and you kind of go, well, she sort of has a point. Well, yeah, he's sort of appearing ungrateful. Well, she's just sort of an innocent fan. Maybe he's taken things too far. But it's when you find out the extent of how psychopathic she is the point where you totally are with Paul Sheldon, where it's like, dude, you got to get out of this house.
And I'm going to actually backtrack a little bit here to show off some crochet that appears earlier in the film, but it's in the same living room as the memory lane book that Paul Sheldon is looking at. So the first are these two pillows sitting on a chair, and then you see a little bit of a crocheted afghan through the window of this shot. Now, both of these pieces appear very quickly in the scene where Paul leaves his room for the first time. Now, these Afghans and these pillows are very sort of Americana, and there's a lot in Annie Wilkes's house that are sort of these old-fashioned throwback Americana pieces. Some of them might even be rather problematic, but what's interesting with the pillows and the Afghans is these look very much homemade, and as I've said before, I can't imagine Annie Wilkes being a knitter or a crocheter. And it got me thinking at some point, like, where did they come from? Did somebody make these for her? Perhaps she took them from one of her victims. They're like trophies that she just has around the house. Maybe?
I'm going to warn you now, the hardest scene to watch is coming up because Annie is back.
But she doesn't come into Paul's room.
Paul's like, okay, the immediate danger is past. I'm going to put my knife away. Big mistake there, Paul. Big, big, big mistake. Annie Wilkes knows a lot more about what's been going on than Paul Sheldon is aware of. So this is for years, because I read the book first, and I knew what happened in the book. When this scene came up in the movie, Annie Wilkes decides that she is going to, quote unquote, hobble Paul Sheldon. And to me, this is the most gruesome part of the movie because she has a sledgehammer. And basically what Annie Wilkes is going to do is take the sledgehammer to his ankles and hobble Paul Sheldon. For years, I thought that her swinging the sledgehammer and breaking his ankles didn't actually get shown because every time the moment came up, I closed my eyes. Every time. Every time Annie Wilkes brings up the sledgehammer, I close my eyes, and then I hear the scream of pain, and I open my eyes again. So I always thought that. Rob Reiner doesn't show Annie Wilkes hitting Paul Sheldon's ankle with a sledgehammer. This past year, I kept my eyes open for this moment. No! Rob Reiner freaking shows the first blow. And I'm like, the image is now forever burned on my mind, and I'm just gonna say, don't make my mistake. Just close your eyes. Just don't look. Close your eyes. Trust me on this. Trust me. I think I made a mistake. Definitely made a mistake. Okay, I made a mistake. It's okay. Mistakes happen. When they happen, you just have to undo them.
So we are getting towards the end of the movie, and this next section is really about Buster putting the pieces together. Now, there is one knitwear piece from Frances Sternhagen, but it's not terribly interesting. And frankly, at this point, I think it's getting close to wrapping things up. There's one last piece of knitwear that appears at the end. So we are gonna get to it. So Buster's put the pieces together and figured out that Paul Sheldon is at Annie's place. So she drugs Paul and throws him in the basement and starts giving Buster a tour of the house. Unfortunately, Buster, spoiler alert, doesn't make it. So Buster and maybe Paul Sheldon's last chance at rescue are gone. But Annie Wilkes has another plan because she now knows that their time together at her farm are coming to an end, and she plans on taking both his and her own life, and she's prepared. And what proceeds forward is the end of the movie and Paul Sheldon saving his life. But let's focus on the last cardigan we see with Annie Wilkes.
Calls for Annie. The book is nearly done.
So Annie Wilkes has been wearing this cardigan throughout the final scenes of the movie, and it is another olive green textured cardigan, but she has the lighter gray shirt underneath it, so it's kind of an interesting combination. And the textured stitch pattern itself is really lovely on this cardigan because it has a really nice diagonal movement. Um, it's hard to know for sure, but it looks like it's some herringbone stitch. And it is interesting that she wears plaids and flannels and patterned woven shirts, but all of her knitwear are solid colors and usually featuring some kind of textured stitch pattern, whether it's a broken rib or a little bit of cabling at the sleeve. Whereas both Buster and Virginia at times appear in stranded colorwork, and I just think that's an interesting choice.
But I think that is the pinnacle of the movie in terms of the knitwear, is him wearing that amazing worsted weighted colorwork sweater. I love Misery. It's such a great horror movie, but it is my favorite kind of horror movie, which is, it's much more psychological. Yes, there is some physical gruesomeness, but it's mostly psychological, and it's so well done. The performances are amazing, and the costuming, the production design, all work so well together. And of course, the knitwear and the crochet wear and the fiber arts in it is a fantastique. Like, it just brings everything together so wonderfully. So that is my sort of journey through Misery. This is where I'm at with my dishcloth, and I got about a third of the way through, so that's a pretty good chunk. Normally these dishcloths take me about 4 or 5 hours to do straight. I would like to hear your thoughts. What do you think of the movie Misery? What did you think of the knitwear in it? Did you try to take a look at any of it? I'd love to hear about it in the comments down below. And if there's another movie that you would like me to watch and kind of do maybe something similar as to what I'm doing here, please let me know that as well in the comments down below. I hope you enjoyed today's video. If so, please, if you have not already, please make sure that you subscribe, hit the notification bell, and share this video with your friends. Once again, thank you so much for joining me. I hope that you have a great day, evening, weekend, weeknight, whenever you may be watching this. And as always, happy health and happy crafting and movie watching. Bye.
So next time it rains, don't sizzle in a drizzle. No longer will it be necessary to let rain spoil your fun. Now you can keep your windshield clear and dry with a drizzle guard. Simply attach it to your windshield, and in a jiffy you're enjoying the movie without constantly running your windshield wipers. A drizzle guard will save you gasoline and wear and tear on your battery. After the show is over, all you do is take off your drizzle guard, roll it up, and it's ready to be used again, just like an umbrella. Drizzle guards are on sale now at the concession center.